I want you to predict 5 years from now in terms of supply chain planning and digital capabilities, where we are going to be in your eyes.
Can we use Gen AI for this answer? Yeah, I think that the biggest area that I've seen is if you look at what Gen AI does in planning, lots of focus is on a better forecast because of you move from one attribute that drives a statistical model, that's sales order history, right? And now you can factor in sales order history with what's going on with customers, external factors, pricing, competitor pricing, all these different dimensions. But I think really where this heads is there are so many other either implicit or static rules in planning, right? Safety stock, lead times, how well you make ABC classifications. So there's so many rules that exist in your supply chain planning
Right.
ecosystem, right? And I think the real power is the closed feedback loop with Gen AI to say, oh, you're working off of a 10-day lead time for what you buy, and it's universal to the supplier you're going to use or the geography, right? And people say, well, I don't trust that, so I just expedite it whenever I order from them, right? Because I want to make sure I have it, and there's no measures or incentives to not use premium transportation, right? So really what you can see is based on day of the week, based on month in the year, based on seasonality, based on labor, based on supplier performance, right? Based on activity going on in the ports where you receive product, right? If it's the port of Long Beach in early to late August, you've got an extra 10 days backed up in port congestion, and you're going to incur delays in going through customs clearance and demurrage and fuel surcharges and all these other things, right? So I think the static rules that are typically revisited time permitting in Excel and reconfiguring in your planning rules and decisions, you can change all those things to dynamically change. And that's where the power of these things really changes, right? So your forecast accuracy is a function of safety stock and lead times. And if you look at order consumption logic, the forecast and orders and reconciling that and being in short supply, capabilities around distributed order management, looking at an ecosystem of locations and prioritizing customer orders and demand dynamically, doing that in near real time instead of in batch mode, right? So you can have capabilities done in at a much different time sequence because it's all near real time. The computational and storage constraints that were based on money go away with cloud and AI. And the granularity of being able to have different SKUs comply to different rules based on how important they are and dynamically doing those capabilities. We had a project a while ago with machine learning, and it was called zombie products, and it's the old SKU rationalization, right? But if you can get the dead weight out of priorities and be able to um, strip out that kind of noise and overhead out of your planning process, you can simplify that too, right? Planners, when they start the beginning of a month, they've got 30 days roughly to get through their entire planning cycle, and they're already out of time when they start the first day, right? Because of all the S&OP and reconciliation and chasing promotions and events and other activities and short supply and all the other constraints. So it's and all the data analysis. So to be able to have that at your fingertips and be able to drill down with insights and answer questions without the number crunching is a very powerful set of capabilities.
I've asked you, how do you see generative AI evolving in supply chain domain over the next 5 years? And if I can really simplify and summarize what you just said, I would say that Gen AI is giving you the superpowers to connect the dots. So currently everything is so messy in supply chain and people, they work very hard because there isn't, a sufficient amount of transparency across the network. Um, and business processes are very much siloed. And Gen AI could really connect the dots, if I understand you correctly, simplifying the process and providing us a much stronger and clearer transparency.
Yeah,
Um, did I get that right?
that's so spot on. And when you say that, I think I've used the words high fidelity supply chains, and that's really what that means, right? Connecting the dots is different data, right? If you think about in transits as a simple example, whether that's in your planning process and in transit inbound from supplier, right? Knowing with the predictive ETA that it's really 29 days and not 33 days. And what does that mean in terms of factoring that into available inventory, or it's not in play because it's at risk, right? And there's lots of different use cases and different technologies, right? So geofencing and being able to do track and trace, right? So based, and I think the other thing that you mentioned is, today, in the world of applications, you either have Excel and everybody has it and they do their own things to answer questions they need, or they have a license to access the application, right? And in the future, on the cloud component, right, you're going to unlock that set of data, right, connecting the dots. Everyone will have access to that. So if a question, the biggest need is supply chain visibility, but that's more a attribute about what someone really wants to do with data. So if you look at track and trace data, you've got finance as a vested shareholder, manufacturing, logistics, customer service, your planning organization, the P&L that owns the product, customers, and lots of other vested stakeholders. But they all have different use cases with that. So connecting those dots will unlock the power for different users and thousands of use cases to drive those things.
Couldn't agree more. Connecting those dots, I think this is the end goal of the biggest goal objectives in supply chain planning, because it's all about really understand the picture and see everything very clearly in order to take informed decisions. I think you really simplified things for me, and I guess for my audience as well.